On the 6th day of Podmas, my Insequeerity gave to me 6 years of depression. Oh, wow. 6 years of depression. And I feel like I've been 12 years of slave to it because probably 6 years before there was some other shit just in queue. But before we dive into all of that, welcome to Insequeer. The podcast presents the 12 Days of Podmas, and I'm your Insequeer as fuck ass host, Chloe Beck, and you are here for the 6th installment of my life as it crumbles, it's not crumbling, but it's like, let's just say as we piece it back together, shall we? So on this episode, I want to kind of assess and kind of talk about what my insecurities has done to my mental health in terms of how it has manifested in 6 years of what I would like to call depression. I talked a little bit about it when I did 9 nervous breakdowns, but the tragedy with Middle Collegiate Church is kind of what took that from me. And so I kind of wanted to circle back here with just kind of talking about how my insecurities play a role in my mental health and how I have lived life in depression and how, well, fuck it, let's just talk about it. So First, I want to say that my depression started way before 6 years, but I will say it has been the most prominent in the past 6 years of my life. And because I have language, because I had therapists, because I had social media telling me I was depressed, because I was in fact depressed. I am DSM-5, which is the book that psychologists and psychiatrists use to diagnose you, although we're going to say that that is a piece of white trash book because it's so outdated, and it's also the same book that said if you're a queer person you have a disease or mental illness. So while we don't spend too much time assessing the DSM-5 in the mental health world as Black and brown and queer bodies, and by we I mean me, textbook on my records and my insurance and all the things, I have textbook depression. And it is so jarring when you think about how we define depression in social media and in media and in portrayals on movies and television and in songs. And for a long time, I did not think I needed to seek help because I did not look like the Zoloft commercial per se, or I did not need to check into the place where 74 is the perfect weight. Like while I was fully on-fledged, a girl interrupted, I was a person who, because I'm a Black woman, because I am my sole provider, because I am queer, because I am often ignored when it comes to medical and mental, I got up every day and I did some of my best work, had some of my best experiences, engaged with some of the best / worst people in my life in the height of my depression, because I have not had the pleasure of falling apart with my depression the way I see some of my white or more affluent colleagues or counterparts engage with their depression. Like you can be depressed, but you also have D's bills, so you better get D fuck up and get to D job. Okay, so I kind of want to talk about that more than the 6 years of depression or what made me depressed. And I mean, this is the one episode, being full transparent, that I don't have any liner notes for. I just have the title, and it's one that I didn't really know how to engage with because as I sit here right now, while depression, I would have to liken it to, and I apologize for those of you who are experiencing this when it's probably nothing like it, but when I think about something like an STI of herpes, how it can lay dormant and then pop up, I feel like that's how my depression manifests itself. Like I don't want to ever feel like because I'm in a really good place or I'm in a really great season of my life that my depression is gone. I think I've just learned how to maneuver the spaces and live with my depression and spend time with my depression. And the most important thing, vocalizing that I'm having a episode or a period of or experiencing my depression. And I think that's one thing that we need to talk about and unpack in so many platforms and forums about how, oh, you don't look depressed and how damaging that is. Or you've been depressed, oh, you must be okay now. And then like, because a lot of people kind of have this, you got it, you need to have it, you need to live it, you need to be Eeyore and have this cloud over your head at all times. Or the opposite of, you look like you're doing too much to be depressed. You're too happy to be depressed. You're too blessed to be depressed. You're too affluent to be depressed. When We see it in real time. People like Anthony Bourdain or Heath Ledger's, or I'm gonna go out and say Whitney Houston, Michael Jackson, Prince. Fame does not equate to no reason to have other shit. Fame does not fix your traumas or your brain or things like that. It can get you help. It can get you probably a way better therapist where you don't have to worry about, am I going over my health savings account allotment to pay for this medical need, which that's another part about it that I want to address. But you cannot assume what someone has or what someone has achieved will necessarily negate, change, or transform your depression. And these are things that I'm learning and relearning and having to remind myself daily. And also having to educate other people, because I don't ever want you to box me in my depression, because my depression boxes me enough, right? So, and along with that whole depression thing, for a long time, even as someone who has excellent insurance and has excellent therapists who live and breathe and work and charge $250 fucking dollars an hour in the most depressing city I've ever lived in, New York City, for a long time, someone who, even like myself, who has access and understanding and don't buy into the stigma or the assumption that you're crazy or that Black people can just go pray it away. And for example, if me going to church was my fix for depression, when my church burned down, what would I have done? Where would I go? Where do I get held? And also, COVID doesn't even allow you to step foot in the church they tell you to go pray it away at. So I want to really unpack the realities of I had 6 years of depression strong because I didn't even know how to advocate for myself. I didn't even have the funds to get into a relationship to really unpack childhood traumas that started at age 3 and probably in utero. So how could one not have a relationship with depression when you can't even have the funds, the finances, the resources to get through the shit? So for me, the ways in which I medicated my depression were with drinking and sad music and woe is me. And like, I just had enough energy to pull it together to get to work, to do the thing, to listen to other people talk about their depression. When I'm like, your depression seems like a depression I would like to borrow. Would you like to switch? And even that is damaging to depression, because one person's depression, no matter what their circumstance is, I do this thing where I talk about the oppression Olympics. Everybody wants to be oppressed and be the most oppressed of all the stories. And, well, I'll raise your childhood trauma and I'll see you with my queerness. Well, I'll see your queerness with my dad died, and I'll see your dad die with I was assaulted. Like, I have been in ping pongs of who has it worse, right? So I say that to say, I don't want anyone to think that your depression is less than because it doesn't look like, or it isn't as bad as, or it doesn't come with a bunch of other layers that someone else's depression might come with. But I do say that I have had experiences where I talk to people and I hear them discuss their depression, and it really does make me feel sometimes like my depression is so damaging to me, or so much more ill allocated. Like, damn, it feels like some people's depression is an episode, is a sad moment, is you should be, shut the fuck up. Like, sometimes I listen to people and I'm like, just shut the fuck up. Shut the fuck up, shut the fuck up. But you also can't fault a person for their depression feeling like their world is crumbling because everything else is going right in their world, right? Like, honestly, that I should have more empathy for that person, because imagine everything in your life being great. White, cis, hetero, wealthy, educated, the epitome of the socioeconomic status, the white patriarchy. Imagine yourself being at the top of it, like, oh, I don't know, Anthony Bourdain. Imagine having a career, being an expert, being all these things that so many of us are fighting to achieve. And when you race it, and like, well, some people didn't even race because some people are born into their wealth, whatever the case may be. Imagine having all these things that you see so many other people wish they had, wish they could touch it, wish they had access. Imagine knowing that you are, in fact, blessed, in fact, in a place where everything should be perfect and it's still not. So here I am saying, oh, single mom, LGBT, overweight, dated people in the closet, been assaulted, been this, been that, and then you look over and see Anthony Bourdain, who had it all, kill himself. You'd be like, well, damn, bitch, why am I not dead yet? Because if this nigga had it all and he died, you are sitting here with a little bit of nothing and fighting like fuck. So it must suck to feel like you have it all and still not be happy. And that's why I talk about my depression and I work actively at it, because when I get to happy, I'm sorry, I'm already there. Let's take that back. When I get to the things that I want in my life that for a long time I thought would make me happy, when I get those things, I want to be so happy in them that they just add a sprinkle to the work and the person and the wholeness that I am. But I don't want to think that I need to be on the loudspeaker network or be on TV or be in films or tell you those jokes that I'm terrified to tell you on stage, thinking that's where my happiness lies, when my happiness have to lie within. So that is what I've been learning in my 6 years of depression. I've been getting so comfortable with my depression to realize that, like Solange said, you can't eat it away, you can't drink it away, you can't fuck it away, you can't smoke it away. You got to sit with it and work through it. You and your depression have to be married, because you already are. So you can add extra people and partners and things. Like, I look at depression like when people's relationship is going bad and they add a baby. Bitch, now you just have a bad relationship and now a baby who's going to suffer because you all couldn't figure your shit out. So if you don't figure your depression out or figure out how to live with, work through, or how to communicate what you need in those depressed moments or in those depressed episodes, nothing you do outside of it will be as successful or as fulfilling as you want it to be. And now I can turn it back into speaking about me and my depression, and me as a Black woman, as a queer woman, as a woman who has degrees, and a woman who's all these things. Or a woman who, I'm sure to some people, I'm Anthony Bourdain. Let's sit with that for a minute. To some people, look at my life. I live in New York City. I live in the east side, the East Village in Manhattan. I have a career where I don't have to pay traditional rent, although I pay with it with my mental health, which helps give me depression, but that's another story for another day. I have a master's degree and I can get a PhD whenever I decide to sign up for one, and it will probably most definitely be 75% to 100% free. I am someone who has talked to and touched and spent time with a lot of my idols. Or I am someone who is so equipped and so well adored and liked and admired and appreciated, and someone who people aspire to be like. Or I have people who tell me, because of you, I didn't kill myself. But you know what? While all of that is true, and I am so grateful, there's this thing called both, and. You can have all of those things and both still be depressed, still be unfulfilled, still be unsure, still be insecure, right? And I think that is the truth of my truth. And for a long time, along with me not being so financially astute or being able to get the therapist I want because they're not in my price point, I used to tell myself, why are you depressed? Because you have the degrees, the access, the respect, the 1,000+ followers, when some people who look like they're living their best life only have 200 followers, and maybe that's something we need to unpack in another day, not here on Podmas. But society does this thing, especially to Black and brown and queer bodies, of saying, look at how much you've assimilated in spite of all of your identities, in spite of all of your intricacies. And so many of you all don't make it. So many of you all are crack babies, and the epidemic of the crack industry has ruined and tormented your family. Fun fact, I recently had a phenomenal conversation with a professor from UCLA who really talked about a study that was done in which she spent time with 50 women who had given birth to crack babies, and not 50 women, it was a much larger sum of women, but these women admitted to having smoked crack 50 times while the baby was in utero. 50 times while the baby was in utero. And they studied those babies, and there was no damage in relation to actual crack. Crack is not what makes you a crack baby. The things that hurt those same babies who had 50 doses of crack did not do anything to those babies. You want to know what did do something to those babies? Poverty. The fact that their mother wasn't around because she was trying to get the crack. Or the fact that 9 times out of 10, most crackheads or people who ingest the crack situation don't do it from a mansion. They don't do it where their child has the best health care or food or babysitters or support system. So it's not the crack That's the problem. The crack, once again, is the symptom of the problem for the baby and the mother. It's the poverty. It's the low SES. It's the you've been thrown away. So I want to get rid of that whole crack baby energy. But once again, not for here, but it just felt right at the time. But I say that to say, like, I grew up crack adjacent. I grew up with friends and family, like close family who helped raise me, who fell victim to the crack epidemic of the 80s and 90s and today. Crack is like smooth jazz from the 80s, 90s, and today. Crack is still very much alive and well. So when I look at my life and I look at how I grew up in the projects where people were getting cracked out, or my sister tells a story about how her best friend was being passed around as currency so her parents can smoke crack. I'm so blessed to have not been that person, right? So you think about all the ways you navigate your narratives. You navigate being neglected. You navigate being fat. You navigate being alone for majority of your formative years because your parent had you and had other plans when you came about. Like, you navigate all of that, and everybody's like, you're a success story. You're a success story. The movie Precious could have been you. Look at how much you've made it. Look at what you've made it. Look at the life you live. You're so ungrateful. No, bitch, I'm not ungrateful. I'm depressed. I'm depressed because I had to make it. I'm depressed because, people try to applaud you for making it. Making it is not something to be so much proud of. When you see a success story like Chloe, no middle fucking name Beck, who has a story, bitch. When you see me, don't talk to me about, ooh, look at you made it. Talk to me about how did it feel knowing you had to make it because you had no choice. Talk to me about how damaging it is to know that if you don't continue to strive and continue to make it and continue to run, if you don't continue to chase, that you will fall backwards. And you know what your backwards looks like? Your backwards looks like the CMHA, Cleveland Municipal Housing Authority. Your falling back looks like there's no home for you to fall back to. Your falling back looks like you have $25,000 worth of sneakers. And if you don't keep running with those shoes, you're going to have to sell them. And then you're going to have to sell you. And then you're going to have to sell it because you don't have a support system. You don't have the space or the energy, and not even a lot of people who can keep you on your path, because how many times can you make it? I am so proud to have not been any of the statistics that were placed on me in utero, but I cannot tell you that those same statistics do not haunt me and help feed into my depression. No, I'm not 16 and pregnant, but I am terrified to be 33 and pregnant and unable to make sure that I can't protect my child from being 16 and pregnant. Or that if I don't work through all my mental health traumas and then I give birth and I let the DNA of my trauma breathe into my child and then I give birth to the next Jeffrey Dahmer, I'm terrified of that. And I'm also terrified of one day someone saying, you made it, girl, and now what? Because that's, once you get to about 30, 33, you can't keep relying on what it was like in childhood, because that shit has a statute of limitation in society's realm of we accept you. Like, there should be a 30 under 30. The people who made it this far without being fucked up and in a asylum somewhere, given the lives that they've lived by 30. I deserve a fucking gold medal to be as great as I am, but my gold medal is making sure I stay great. I'm prisoned to my greatness because I'm prisoned to my depression, which became my depression because of my circumstance. So maybe it wasn't 6 years of depression. It's been 6 years of me unearthing the 33 years of my life I have been this person. And in the last 6, I've just now had the language, the understanding, the desire, the hope, the want to heal my hurt and then help you all heal yours. Right? Because I'm someone who was able to maneuver past the messaging and see that the messaging, just like every other fucking textbook, shout out to Toya, that wasn't in my textbook from Harlem, shout out to her, because what they don't talk about in the textbooks, okay, is how this trauma shit really does manifest, and how as a Black queer woman, I need 6 years of therapy. All day, every day, intense therapy. But here I am sprinkling in the therapy when I can afford it, sprinkling in the self-care when I am not fearful that my self-care will hinder my progression of growth. Because on the other side of this depression and this running that Chloe Beck is doing is that you have people who couldn't ever fucking fathom the life you've lived, could not even see a piece of it, couldn't even sit through it in a movie. You have those same people saying, hey, where's that report? Right on top of that, Rose, I'm gonna get you that QED report once I pick myself up off the floor from wanting to die. You know, on top of that, after a while, people who could never see your depression, people who don't see you. It blows my mind, people. It blows my mind how many times I engage with white colleagues and white people just like this close, holding damn hands almost. And then when we put on our coats and we bundle up because it's cold and we split separate ways and on the same block, we meet each other and they walk right through you because they don't see you. You don't see a person who led the meeting that you're sitting in. So how could you see that person comes with so much trauma? So then when that person who you already are kind of uncomfortable that they've made it, how did you make it? Why aren't you the statistic that I think you are? And even if you aren't, because I think I know about you based on what I think I know, I'm going to assign some statistics anyway. I'm going to assign that you're an angry Black woman, or that you're immature, or that you don't have the emotional intelligence when you show your true self, when you exercise the same rights you see all your colleagues and friends and college roommates and niggas at your job do, when you see that Karen has had a bad day, or Karen's mom is ill, or Karen's relationship isn't going right, or Karen doesn't like the tone of an email, we spend time and we hold Karen. We create a space for Karen. But when Chloe disagrees, or when Chloe says today's not a good day, or when Chloe thinks she's built a relationship with someone that she can vent to, just saying, hey, I'm just venting to you as my supervisor, but just know I'm going to be stellar in my work because you don't give me a choice. And it still shows up on an eval and says, oh, you need to work on your emotional astuteness. And then you ask, well, what are you talking about? Well, you know, you were a little heightened when this situation happened, and I would just like to see you not be. You know what that sounds like? That sounds like, hey, nigger, get back to work. So that's depressing too, right? And it's a difference between being DSM-5 diagnosed depressed on top of just being heartbroken and disappointed that other people don't even care that you are diagnosed, but they can't wait to use your diagnosis against you. So in 6 years, that's what I've been working on and finding out and working through. And to be fully transparent, I want to be a therapist for that very reason. Because you know what else fucking sucks? You know what else fucking sucks? You finally ignore whatever religious shit. Oh, pray, just go to church. Oh, Black people don't do that. I'm so fucking sick and tired of hearing what Black people don't do. The only thing Black people don't do is thrive. Black people, take your fucking ass to therapy the same way you take your ass to the hookah bar during the pandemic. Take your ass to therapy the same way you want to go to Tulum and eat grapes. Take your fucking ass to therapy the same way you want to take your bitch to Vegas. If you got shot in your chest, would you ignore that bullet? If you know for a fact and you can articulate that you have a drinking problem or you smoke to get rid of the bullshit in your head, if you can acknowledge that sometimes you get so angry you got to hit a partner, or if you can acknowledge that my daddy was tough on me, that nigga used to beat my ass, or my mama was never there. If you can acknowledge all of that shit, you need to be able to acknowledge that it has done something to you and it is stopping you from living your best life. So stop telling young Black men, young Black women, old Black men, old women, stop telling Black people what they do and don't do. Because that's another reason why I sat in depression for 6 years, because I thought it would make me weak. I thought going to get help was something that white people did. And you know what? It is something that white people do. Do it with them. White people have, while we're not going to ignore the 560 years of a head start they've had by pushing us 560 years back after they freed us from slavery. So we're not even talking about 300, 400 years. I don't do math. The shit's been forever. Since niggas have existed in the ways in which we learn English, Black people have been oppressed, have been abused, have been hurt, have been broken, all at the hands of our white masters. Let's acknowledge that for fucking once. Just say it. Y'all fucked us, y'all keep fucking us, and there's no lube in sight. So Black people, now that we know that we've been fucked just like that, we've been fucked, and not in the best way. not no Belly way, not no Jason's lyrics in the Dandelions way, not no Love Jones way. I got to lose my virginity by choice on prom night way. We've been fucked since fuck could be fucked. We've been fucked. So why would you turn around and fuck each other harder? Why would you tell a little boy to man up when he don't even know what a man is because you're not one, because society has broken you too? Why would you tell a young lady who has a skill or a talent or a energy in her body that makes her want to dance that she's being fast? And then when she gets fast, you get quiet. It's crazy what we tell Black people. Don't tell me shit. Don't tell me shit except where's the nearest therapist at the price point that I want and that you're going to pay for it. Tell me that. So in those 6 years, it took me so long to realize my worth and that I wouldn't be weak and that it's not a problem for me to get help, because I got to a point where I could not breathe. And every day I smiled at work, and every day I still put up with other people's bullshit. And every day I got told that I was a problem because I am literally breaking down inside of my brain. Because sometimes trauma is too much to hold. Sometimes my away luggage is full to capacity. Sometimes we carry so much that when we get to the airport, they're like, bitch, this is overweight. It's going to cost you an extra $150 to send this. So I finally worked through all of that shit. And I say, you know what? I'm going to navigate insurance. I'm going to navigate finding a time to actually go to therapy, because you have to work so hard so they don't think that you're not present, because then they will get rid of you or overlook you for shit. And then you do the shit anyway and you still get overlooked. So it's all a mind fuck. And then I get to my therapist's office and it's a white bitch. It's a white woman. So now I'm back being a mammy, and I got to educate you on the Black plight, about why things hurt differently or why they feel a certain way. I got to tell you why you and your white counterparts are shitty to me and mine. Then I got to tell you why my counterparts are shitty to me and mine. And then I got to tell you about the time I was molested at 3. You see how much work it is to get help? That's like going to the doctor with that bullet hole in your fucking chest and you say, hey, hand me the scalpel. I'ma still pay you. I'ma still let you get all the credit. But here, let me teach you how to do this. That's why I want to be a therapist, because sometimes, even though all Black people, we all joke and say we all live the same life. We all love that wicker chair. We all had fucking velvet photos somewhere with an African or an afro and a nigga holding the bitch all sexy and like a voyage to Atlantis. We all remember the Martin Luther King fans at church. We all, somebody's grandmother's the best macaroni and cheese maker, or fuck potato salad, or we all were born knowing how to do the electric slide. We all know how to play spades. We all know why the cage bird sings, and we all know that Mr. should have got his ass beat by Seeley. We all know that as Black people. While we have all those things in common, we are all very different. We all have very different lived experiences. But the one thing that connects us is the fact that we share this skin and we walk out into that white world. So it's so refreshing to finally go into a place that is supposed to be safe, where you're supposed to be able to unravel and not have to do the mental work of teaching someone who said it is their job. If you sign up and, hey, white friends, brown friends, Asian friends, even Black friends, I want you to hear this and hear this so crystal clear. When you sign on for a profession that says I am a helper, it is your job to do 2 things. 1, if you're going to take on a client that looks like Chloe blank Beck, it is your job to do the research to understand the history of Chloe blank Beck. You cannot come to me with just the DSM-5, because the DSM-5, if the DSM-5 had its way, it would say you're a nigger, disease, right? So you can't just look at the textbook. You have to look at the context. Before I can even talk to you guys about my depression here, about my relationship trauma, about my mental health, about all those things, I should never have to tell you, hey, you ever heard of Jim Crow? Hey, do you know that affirmative action, while they continuously use it against Black women, it benefited white women more? Or hey, you know, the minute I raise my voice in passion, in advocacy for a white person. The only time I, Chloe Beck, raise my voice in my work is when I'm trying to advocate for someone who typically doesn't look like me. And to be told that you're aggressive, you're angry. Black women are terrifying to the white man, the white woman, the Black man, the Black woman. We are terrifying. I need you to know that. I don't need you to know Chloe Beck's specific story, but I need you to have a framework of what it's like to be Black in America if you're going to take a Black client. And if you can't do that, the number one thing you should do when we set those boundaries in these meetings where it's, I have to come to you because you are in my insurance network, you're the only one available, you're the only one that's available in the timeline that I'm allowed to be away from the plantation. Tell me what you don't know. Be honest about your insecurities around my Blackness. Or I'm gonna give you 3. Don't take me as a client. Before I dropped out of my mental health and wellness program at this institution because it wasn't for me, because once again, it was feeding me white shit that I just ate enough. It's off my diet. I no longer eat white shit. Wipe my hands of it. I had a man say, clear as day, he's like, if a client has had any instance with drugs, I don't accept them. And it was jarring at first, but I was like, I would much rather you say, can't sit here, whites only, or no colors allowed, than making me get comfortable with you when you despise me or don't invest in me or don't hear me or don't see me. I would rather put my Black dollars or your white dollars that you let me Black borrow in the hands of a Black and brown body that can at least meet me with knowing what it's like to be discriminated against, who can at least meet me with knowing that they too have to play the politics in their offices, even if it's a Black owned one. Because even when Black people, I've learned that when Black people get these pieces of the pie and they get their own companies and they do this thing, they turn around and do the same oppressive thing. They don't want to work with Black people because we've been told that we do suck. We've been told that we are late to work, that we are combative, that we don't pay attention, that we might steal. So even if you get a Black therapist, you have to realize that Black therapists are still ingrained with white truth. So I know that, and I hear it all the time when I was in my classes, you are so important. We need you. We need you. It's motherfucking 2020. So you mean to tell me since the ages of Freud, Freudian slip, since him until our Lord's day of this day when Kamala Harris is about to be the first Black and first South Asian woman, because I'm never going to discount her other ethnicities, finally getting to probably definitely the second highest seat in the land, but so close to the first. Between Freud, when mental health and shit was just getting its due, and from Freud to Kamala, Black and brown and queer therapists are still in the less than 20%, 10% of therapists. And 9 times out of 10, they still have to work in a white office because who has the capital? Who has the capital and the insurance and the understanding and the time and the energy to put all those pieces together and then on top of it become reputable, right? Like, I'm phenomenal at everything I do. I'm a consultant, I'm a producer, I'm a creator, I'm on air behind the camera, I'm an editor, I'm fucking about to become a sound engineer 3 clicks away from it. I'm in the process of figuring out if I can afford to be a life coach because I feel like I can coach you hoes. I'm tired of giving this shit away for free. On top of, I'm still so disheartened that I dropped out of that program because I do want to do this work for 2 reasons. 1, I want to charge white people $250 for me to listen to their woe is me's and treat them the way they treat us and be like, can't quite relate, but let's have some breathing exercises, shall we? And that's, guys, I'm being satirical, but like, I do want to be in the space where I can charge people I don't want to be the help for free anymore. I want to charge you for this. I have people who call me at 4 a.m. and say, can you just listen to my white problems? And because it's my nature to be a mammy, I listen. And when it's my time to talk about my problems, I'm like, I don't have any to share because I know your brain, based on what you just shared to me about your problems, if you had a piece of one of my problems, you would be Anthony Bourdain. So I want to be paid for my bosom of Black warmth and mammyisms, but also because I want to show Black people what Black people do. Black people go to therapy, and furthermore, Black people can talk to Black people, or queer people can talk to queer people, or Black women can talk to Black women. I belong in that industry, but because I had so many years of depression and I'm just now unearthing them within this 6 years, I am now exhausted because I've been doing all this shit for free for so long, and now the uptick and the boom, and now Black people are finally at the table like, ooh, we should think about and talk about and unpack. I don't want to go to school to do it. I don't want to learn what Freud had to say anymore. I don't want to hear the white man's way. I don't want to do Gestalt. I don't want. And that's how they get you. That's how they get you. By the time we find out where we fit, we are already exhausted or too big or too small or too broken. But don't worry about it, because I'm going to figure it out. If I'm your life coach, your content creation consultant, or your therapist, Black people, it is my goal and my thrive in my life to make sure that you know that you are supported, to know that you and your trauma matter, to know that you are not an angry Black woman. You are a woman who's never been hurt in your life. So, probably not the episode we thought we were going to talk about, but therapy, go. Depression is real. Don't assign how you define a depression to anyone else and how they decide their depression or choose to share their depression. Because to be fully transparent, a lot of people who are overtly talking about their depression, and it might be annoying to you to see every post about, oh, I had a breakdown, or oh, I'm not well, you're still only seeing 10% of it. So if you're already annoyed at their 10% of depression, do you think you're ever going to really know a person, or that person's ever going to feel supported enough to tell you their truth? I know I don't talk about mine. Ow. Thank you so very much for listening. Black people, brown people, white allies, queer, trans, non-binary, straight, friends, families, and foes. But please know that 6 years of depression is not 6 years of depression. It's just 6 years of acknowledgement of some things that are so much deeper. And I hope in this holiday season, where everyone is typically somewhere in the hue of mourning or hue of depression or hue of both, because that's where I live. I think this episode before was going to be very much about how amazing Christmas was for me, and how in the past 6 years, it has just been so hurtful. It has been so lonely. It has been, when they say it's the most magical, the most wonderful time of the year and you feel like shit, it's really hard to say, actually, Christmas sucks. Christmas hurts. Christmas just reminds me, the one day of the year that reminds me that all 365 are not for me, by me, or supportive of me and my trauma. So when you are doing your Christmases and you're sending your cards and you're talking to people and you're checking in and you're catching up and you're watching, please remember each other, and remember that while it's the most wonderful time for you, it might not be the most wonderful time for your friends or your family or your colleagues. And remember that trying to have this goodwill towards all, or whatever the fuck the cheesy thing goes, try to use some of that Christmas cheer throughout the rest of the year. And that was it. Installment 6 of the 12 Days of Podmas. And that was your small, and when I say small, I mean 37 minutes counting. That was your window into what my depression has taught me. And we didn't even really talk about my depression. All right, everybody, 'tis the season to go to therapy, to find a therapist that fits, and to hold therapists accountable. And for therapists, 'tis the season to put down the DSM-5 and pick up any Black book. All right, y'all, I'm out. Goodbye.